Everyone told you you're too much, too sensitive, too deep, too alive. But what if they're wrong? What if your weakness is actually a superpower, and the world's been lying to you this whole time? You don't fit in because you weren't born to. You're here to wake up, and this video will show you how. Watch now, or stay asleep. Your choice. Moments when something deep within you whispers that you don't quite see the world the way others do. You can't fully explain it. Perhaps you've never been able to. It wasn't something you chose, it simply is. There's a unique lens through which you perceive reality, one that brings meaning to silence and depth to things others find mundane. While people overlook subtle details, you feel them intensely. For you, silence speaks louder than noise. You sense pain hidden behind smiles, sorrow veiled in quiet. You carry the emotions of others as if they were your own, even when no words are spoken. You didn't ask to be this way. You've just always been this way. Carl Jung once said that special souls are not born in comfort but forged in the silent fire of introspection. Maybe that explains it. Maybe that's why, even as a child, you often felt like you didn't belong, as if your soul came from another time, another place entirely. While others ran toward noise, you turned inward. While the world focused on the external, you explored the universe within, and that came with a cost, a deep, aching loneliness. Not because you were alone, but because you feared no one truly understood how you feel, how you are. Yet your sensitivity, your emotional depth, your way of connecting with life, it isn't a weakness. It's not something to fix or hide. It's a sign, a reminder. Proof that within you lives something extraordinary, a soul that perceives more, knows without being told, and feels what others refuse to acknowledge. You carry an ancient truth inside you, one you might not yet have words for, but it's there, quietly burning in your chest. If you've ever been told you're too much, too emotional, too intense, too reflective, it's not because something's wrong with you. It's because the world hasn't learned how to hold the depth of souls like yours. But hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are awake. Awake in a world still fast asleep. And when a soul awakens, everything around it begins to change, even if it takes time. Having a special soul means everything touches you more intensely. Not because you're fragile, but because your sensitivity lets you see beyond the surface. You don't just hear words, you feel the energy behind them, the sadness, the longing, the unspoken pain. The suffering of others doesn't just pass you by, it lingers in your heart as if it were your own. The world may have called you too much. It may have told you to toughen up, to stop overthinking, to stop feeling so deeply. But what they don't understand is that you can't live any other way, and more importantly, you shouldn't. This intensity isn't a curse, it's a blessing in disguise. Jung believed that to discover your light, you must face your shadow. And you, with all your depth, have faced storms within yourself that others can't comprehend. You've sat in silence, questioning your purpose. You've carried emptiness in your chest. You've asked, what's the point? And yet, you're still here. Still searching. Still feeling. That voice inside you, that's your soul. And not everyone can hear theirs. Most drown it out with noise, distractions or pretense, but not you. You've learned to sit with silence even when it hurts. You've learned that wounds don't need to be denied, they need to be honored. That pain doesn't pull you away from who you are. It returns you to it. Your soul is special because it chose to feel. It chose not to numb itself. It chose to awaken. Yes, awakening can be painful. It can feel like a lonely road, but it's also sacred. In a world obsessed with escaping inward truths, you chose to go deeper. While others search for answers outside themselves, you closed your eyes and asked the questions only the soul can answer. Who am I? What am I here to give? What does it mean to live authentically? You may not have all the answers yet, but asking these questions already sets you apart. It doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're finding your way back to your truth. A special soul isn't defined by what it accomplishes, but by what it transforms. Every time you chose forgiveness over resentment, every time you let yourself cry when the world told you to be strong, every time you loved despite the risk of hurt, you embodied your true power. Your soul doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It vibrates on a different frequency, and though that frequency can feel isolating at times, it is never wrong. In fact, it's exactly what this world needs. Even if you've often felt like you don't fit in, the truth is, you're finally beginning to fit into yourself. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to awaken, to transform, to remind others of the parts of themselves they've forgotten. As Jung said, a life not lived is a disease from which one can die. And you, even if you've hidden, even if you've gone silent at times, know there's still a life inside you waiting to be lived. A fire that hasn't gone out. A light that refuses to be extinguished. Your soul isn't special just because it feels different. It's special because it carries a mission, one that lives beyond words, beyond logic, beyond what the eyes can see. Sometimes that mission isn't grand or loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as choosing love in a moment of anger. Speaking truth when it's easier to stay silent. Seeing someone for who they truly are when no one else does. It's in the subtle details. The way you listen without judgment. The space you hold for those who've forgotten how to hold themselves. The silent companionship you offer. Maybe no one has ever applauded you for these things. Maybe you've never been praised or thanked. But your soul doesn't need recognition. It seeks only truth. When you have a different kind of soul, you can't follow the paths others have paved. You grow tired of noise, of shallowness, of trying to fit into molds never meant for you. You're not drawn to empty gestures or superficial approval. There's something in you that has always searched for more. Something authentic, profound, deeply your own. And that search hasn't been easy. The more awake you become, the more you see how asleep the world really is. You notice the pain disguised as success, the fear masquerading as ambition, the disconnection passed off as normal. You've tried to adapt, to fit in, to meet expectations. But something always felt off. A silent discomfort, a quiet emptiness, a voice whispering, "This isn't your place." That feeling wasn't weakness. It was intuition, your soul calling you back to yourself. And in that discomfort, in that space of not belonging, your true transformation began. Because special souls aren't forged in comfort. They're shaped in chaos, in doubt, in pain that forces them to look inward. When you started that inward journey, something shifted. You stopped seeking answers outside yourself. You no longer needed others to validate what you felt. You became your own refuge, your own guide. And in that place you discovered something powerful. What once hurt you began to open you. What once isolated you began to connect you. What once confused you began to reveal truth. A soul that learns to be with itself is a soul no longer afraid of its own light. Now it no longer hurts to be different. You start to honor it. You realize you weren't born to blend in, but to expand. You weren't meant to follow, but to carve your own path. You don't need to be understood by everyone, only by those who truly see you. Real connection isn't based on appearances. It's a meeting of frequencies, and when you elevate yours, everything shifts. One of the greatest gifts of a special soul, it awakens others simply by existing. You don't need grand gestures to change the world. Sometimes, just by how you listen, how you are, you light up places that once knew only shadow. Not everyone can do that. Because to reach that point, you had to fall, break, ask the questions others fear, and you chose not to stay in your wounds. You chose to move through them, to turn pain into understanding, into compassion, into a strength that doesn't scream but stands unshaken. People who've walked through their own hell with awareness carry a rare humility. They no longer need to prove anything. They know who they are, and that truth, even unspoken, is felt. Your soul doesn't settle for survival. It longs to live fully, deeply, truthfully, with purpose. That's why anything false now feels unbearably heavy. Empty conversations, forced connections, goals that aren't yours. They no longer fit your journey, not because you're better, but because you've learned to honor your energy. And when you allow yourself to be unfiltered, life responds differently. You no longer chase. You no longer beg for attention or validation. You attract what resonates with your essence and release what doesn't without fear. Because now you know, nothing real can be lost. At this point on your path, you no longer seek to belong. You seek truth, presence, peace. And in that process, something profound awakens. You reconcile with your past, not by denying it, but by seeing it as sacred ground. You forgive old hurts, not by pretending they didn't matter, but by understanding them deeply. You feel gratitude, not just for the good, but for what made you stronger, wiser, more human. Your soul is special, profoundly special, because it chose to awaken in a world that prefers sleep. It didn't settle for the surface. It was drawn instinctively to the essential. Yes, that's made you feel alone at times. But that solitude was never punishment. It was preparation, a sacred space where you could finally hear the voice no one else could teach you, your own. Now you understand. Your sensitivity wasn't overreacting. It was perception. Your intensity wasn't a burden. It was a compass. Your love wasn't too much. It was the kind of love this world needs, so don't change. Don't dim your light. Don't hide. This world has too many copies. But your soul? Your soul is one of a kind. If this resonates, if something in you whispers, "This is for me," then maybe it's time. Time to stop hiding. Time to honor your depth as a strength. Time to embrace your uniqueness not as a flaw but as the gift it is. The world doesn't need more masks. It needs awakened souls like yours. So keep walking this path. Trust what you feel. And remember, you weren't born to fit in. You were born to stand out, not for attention, but for truth. And that makes all the difference. If this video felt like it was made just for you, that's because it was. Your soul didn't stumble here by accident. Smash that like button if you finally feel seen. Share this with someone who's too much in a world that's not enough. And subscribe right now because this is just the beginning of your awakening. The world needs what you carry. Don't you dare hide it. Remember, you're not alone anymore.